now we're going to hear from Emily Lane, who Principal Scientist at NIWA. He's going to talk about rapid flood assessment.
Kia ora koutou, ko Emily Lane tako ingoa, hei kaipatau ahau ki Tairāwhiti Nukurangi. Thank you very much. And yeah, as Belinda said, I'm talking about the rapid flood hazard assessment and modelling for Cyclone Gabrielle recovery. So this is working in Tairāwhiti and Te Matau Maui, Hawke's Bay, looking at flood hazard information sort of for building back in a more resilient fashion. So the first thing that we're going to be looking at is an understanding of the flooding that actually occurred during Cyclone Gabrielle at a regional scale. So if you look on the right-hand side, you'll see there, those are the catchments in Hawke's Bay and Tairāwhiti, and that's our best understanding of the actual rainfall that fell during those 3 days of the Cyclone Gabrielle. And I mean, some of that was over 500 millimeters often in 24 hours. So there's some quite extreme rainfall. We're actually going to update that with some citizen science that actually showed in some places you were even getting up to 700 millimeters in that sort of time frame. But we really need to understand what this event tells us about the likelihood of a similar event happening again in the future, especially with the changing climate. But the problem is a lot of the gauges actually failed during the event, so we don't even have understandings of the flow. But by modelling the flooding, we can actually back out what flows we were getting in those rivers to understand that. And once we've got, so we're developing for each of those catchments that you see there, for the floodplains of them, we're going to be developing actual two-dimensional flood inundation models, and we can also use them for places, especially the Heretaunga Plains and near Gisborne, looking at some stop bank breach scenarios. So what happened, but what could have also happened, and sort of looking at some other options, doing some climate change simulations as well, and also sort of understanding how the sediment change is the flood hazard in the future. Again, especially in places like Esk Valley, where you had huge amounts of sediment coming down, that's actually going to have a significant impact on the flood hazard. So we're trying to get an understanding of that. There's a range of outputs that we're going to come up with. So we're going to have flood inundation models developed and calibrated for Cyclone Gabrielle. So we're going to have basic models for each of those locations for the floodplains of each of theirs, sort of all along Tairāwhiti and Te Matau Maui, and as many as possible we'll actually have them calibrated using the Gabrielle event. Have those flood frequency curves recalculated, taking into account Cyclone Gabrielle, and trying to sort of actually understand how cyclones can be taken into account, because that's not done particularly well with the current flood frequency analysis. We'll have a rapid assessment of the new flood inundation hazard, including updated flood frequency curves and the effects of sediment. And a lot of that work will feed into what Ryan Paulick was telling about, sort of because the flood modelling will feed into that risk model. Also the stop bank breach scenarios modelled, and recommendations for future flood resilience work in Tairāwhiti and Hawke's Bay. So our stakeholder project users, some of the main ones are the Gisborne District Council and the Hawke's Bay Regional Council. We're also working with iwi and hapu from Tairāwhiti and Te Matau Maui. So we've got some good connections already with Ngāti Kahungunu. We're still working on building those relationships with Tairāwhiti. And also central government agencies. Again, a lot of the work that we're going to be doing is feeding into Ryan Paulick's multi-hazard model, and so they'll be getting a lot of information through that. So in terms of sort of the resources and the dates, so we had a sort of a stocktake and knowledge gap identification and prioritisation workshop in Napier in June, so that's already happened, and we sort of worked out from then what the priorities are. So Tairāwhiti and Te Matau Maui have slightly different needs depending on what they want. So some of the stuff we're doing is the same for both. Some of it sort of is a little bit more bespoke. We're working on those flood inundation models for the priority catchments. So we've already got started on that. We should have some results sort of starting in early August, and there might be sort of a couple of iterations depending on sort of how much calibration is required. then looking at flood frequency curves reassessed for those priority locations by early September, and then the hazard assessment scenarios, residual risk of stop banks. This sort of information will be available as they become available throughout the project. The project runs through into December 2023, and so we'll end with another stakeholder workshop for feedback and next steps, and that'll probably be in Gisborne. So I'm the leader of the project. Liam Foster from WSP is also sort of helping out with some of that engagement with the regional and the district council, and we've got a group of people from the Countspert experts, dedicated liaison points to the government, iwi hapu, we've got flood experts from NIWA, WSP, Auckland University in Canterbury, and we've also got Kaylee Crawford-Flett, who's a stop bank engineer, helping with that. But yeah, thank you very much.